What could be hiding behind a door that hasn't been opened in a quarter of a century? Ivan Stepanov never asked himself this question until that frosty January morning in 2020, when the wind blew the lock off an old farm shed. At that moment, his quiet life as a caretaker turned into a detective story that shook the entire Tver region. Before we begin the story, please write which city you are from. We are very interested to know where you are watching our video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your rating. Ivan lived without any major upsets for 62 years. He worked as a mechanic for 20 years, then retired. When he was offered a job as a caretaker at the abandoned Rasvet collective farm, he accepted without hesitation. Peace and quiet, a small but steady salary. What more could a man of his age want? But if he had known what secret awaited him behind the walls of the old barn, he might have chosen a different job. The morning of January 15th was particularly windy. Ivan slowly walked around the property, leaning on a stick. His left leg had been hurting for 3 years. He had inherited his limp from his army service and hard work as a mechanic. The snow crunched under his feet, and the frost bit his cheeks. It was a typical winter walk along a familiar route. But something was wrong. The door of the old shed was hanging on one hinge. Ivan stopped, puzzled. The lock lay in the snow, torn off by the wind or something else. For 20 years, this door had been locked tight. No one was interested in what was inside the dilapidated building, and now it swung open, as if inviting him to enter. At that moment, Ivan felt that his peaceful life was coming to an end. Inside the shed, it smelled of rotten straw and forgotten time. Ivan turned on his flashlight and looked around. It was an ordinary room. Wooden beams, the remains of farm equipment, piles of old boards. But then why had it been locked so carefully? He slowly walked along the walls, shining the light into the corners. In the far corner, something glinted in the light of the flashlight. The edge of a metal box protruded from under the floorboards. Ivan crouched down and pushed the boards aside. The box was small, about the size of a shoebox, but heavy. There were traces of rust on the lid, but the lock was still secure. Ivan's hands trembled as he lifted his find. What could have been kept in a secret place for a quarter of a century? And why had someone hidden it so carefully? At home, Ivan looked at the box for a long time, not daring to open it. His intuition told him that there was something important inside, something that could turn his life upside down. Finally, he took a hammer and broke the lock. The lid opened with a quiet creak. What he saw inside made his blood run cold. Passports. 4 Soviet passports with photographs. A man, a woman, a teenager, and a girl, a family. Under the passports lay gold jewelry, wedding rings, a chain, earrings. There were also savings books with large sums of money and a teenager's diary. On the cover, in a child's handwriting, was written, Artem Volkov, 8th grade. The last entry was dated December 31st, 1995. Ivan slowly turned the pages of the diary, the usual entries of a 14-year-old boy, school, friends, a passion for radio engineering. But the last entry was strange. Dad said that tomorrow we'll be rich. I don't understand what he means. Mom is nervous. Masha asks why adults are so sad before New Year's. Tomorrow should be fun. But for some reason I'm scared. What happened to this family on New Year's Eve, 1995? Ivan took an old notebook out of his pocket and found the number of the local police officer. Sergei Krotov had worked in the village of Vit for 20 years and knew every resident by sight. If anyone remembers the Volkov family, it's him. The phone answered after a long ring. Sergei Sergeich, this is Stepanov from the farm. I need to talk to you, urgently. What's happened, Ivan Petrovich? I found something. I think it's related to an old case. A pause, then a cautious question. What case? The Volkov family. Do you remember them? A long silence on the line, then a heavy sigh. I'll be there in an hour. Don't say anything to anyone until I arrive. Something in the police officer's voice told Ivan that he had stumbled upon a secret that many would prefer to forget. While Ivan waited for the police officer, he went through the contents of the drawer again and again. Each item told its own story. The wedding rings were clearly expensive, beyond the means of an ordinary engineer. The savings books contained large sums of money. Where did a Soviet family get that kind of money in 1995? And why were all these valuables buried in an abandoned shed instead of in a bank or at home? Sergei Krotov arrived exactly an hour later. The local police officer looked alarmed. Ivan had never seen him like this before. Usually calm and level-headed, Krotov nervously twirled his mustache and couldn't sit still. When Ivan showed him the contents of the box, the police officer's face turned deathly pale. My God, Krotov whispered, taking Mikhail Volkov's passport in his hands. 25 years. We've been looking for them for 25 years. Looking for them? So they're really gone? They disappeared on New Year's Eve, 1995, the whole family, without a trace. It was the most high-profile case in the region. Krotov shook his head. Mikhail worked as an engineer at a local factory. Elena taught children at school. They had 2 children, Artem and Masha. Good people, well-respected. And then suddenly, they vanished into thin air. Ivan felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. So he was holding evidence from 25 years ago in his hands. Evidence that could finally shed light on one of the most mysterious stories in the Tver region. But why were these things in a shed? And what happened to the family? The case was handled by investigator Morozov. Krotov continued. A good specialist, but even he found nothing. No clues, no witnesses. The family just vanished. He looked at Ivan with a heavy gaze. And now you find their things a quarter of a century later. That changes everything. The district police officer took out his phone and dialed a number. Alexander Viktorovich, this is Krotov from Vitya. We need to meet, urgently. The Volkov case. Yes, that one. New evidence has come to light. Pause. I'll be in the regional center in 2 hours. Krotov turned to Ivan. Put everything in a bag. Carefully, this is evidence. And don't say a word to anyone until the investigator returns. Do you understand? Ivan nodded. He understood more than he wanted to. He understood that his quiet life as a watchman was over. He understood that he had become a key witness in a case that would shake the entire region. And he understood that the secret of the Volkov family was only beginning to be revealed. But what else was hidden in that abandoned farm? That evening, an emergency meeting was held at the regional administration. Alexander Morozov, now a police colonel, carefully examined the contents of the box. In 25 years, he had aged and turned gray, but his eyes remained as sharp as ever. The Volkov case had haunted him throughout his career, the only unsolved crime on his record. Was the box under the floorboards? Morozov asked. Yes, buried not very deep. Someone was in a hurry, apparently, Krotov replied. Morozov picked up Artem's diary and read the last entry. His face darkened. The boy had a premonition of doom, and the mention that they would become rich is new information. He looked at the district police officer. In 1996, we didn't have this evidence. So someone hid it after the family disappeared? It looks that way. But who and why? Morozov thought for a moment. We need to check everyone who had access to the farm over the years, and also conduct a full DNA analysis on all the items. He paused. This case is reopening. Krotov nodded. I'll make a list of all the farm workers since 1996, but the farm closed in 1998. Since then, only the guards have changed. Then let's start with the guards. Morozov put the evidence in the safe. And one more thing. Tomorrow we're going to the village of Vit. We need to take another look at the Volkov's house and the farm. Maybe something has changed in a quarter of a century. He looked at his colleagues seriously. I feel like we're on the verge of a big discovery. But none of them could have imagined what secrets the snow-covered village of Vit held. Nor could they have imagined that the Volkov family was just the tip of the iceberg in a story that would shake the very foundations of their understanding of good and evil. Tomorrow, discoveries awaited them that would force them to rewrite the entire chronology of events of that fateful New Year's Eve. On the morning of January 16th, the investigation team left for the village of Vit. Morozov, Krotov, and forensic expert Solovyova were the same people who had investigated the case 25 years ago. Only now did they have hope of finally finding answers to the questions that had tormented them for a quarter of a century. The village greeted them with frosty silence. Over the years, many houses had been abandoned, and the young people had moved to the cities. No more than 30 residents remained, mostly pensioners. The Volkov's house stood on the edge of the village, abandoned and half-ruined. No one dared to live there after what had happened. The house hasn't changed much, said Krotov, opening the rusty lock. After the family disappeared, it was sealed off. Then the seals were removed, but no one wanted to live here. Inside, it smelled of damp and forgotten time. The furniture was covered in dust, but the layout of the rooms remained the same. Morozov slowly walked through the house, remembering details from 25 years ago. The living room, where half-eaten New Year's dishes remained on the table. His parents' bedroom with neatly made beds. Children's rooms with toys and textbooks. Is this where you found the note? He asked, pointing to the kitchen table. Yes. We've gone to meet some friends. We'll be back tomorrow. MV. But the handwriting wasn't Mikhail's. Expert Solovyova took out modern equipment and began taking samples from various surfaces. In a quarter of a century, technology had come a long way. What was impossible in 1996 could now provide answers to all questions. Interesting, she muttered, examining the door handle. There are a lot of fingerprints here. Some are very old, but there are also fresher ones. She looked at her colleagues. Someone entered this house after the family disappeared. Morozov frowned. How is that possible? The house was under surveillance. Not constantly, Krotov admitted. The first few years, yes. Then, people gradually forgot. Maybe someone from the neighborhood came in out of curiosity. But the criminalist shook her head. These prints weren't left out of curiosity. Someone was looking for something specific. Look, the drawers in the cabinet have been pulled out, the books on the shelf have been moved. Someone methodically searched the house. Her words hung in the air, like an ominous omen. What was the mysterious stranger looking for in the Volkov's house? And did he find what he was looking for? Morozov felt that they were getting closer to the solution. But every new fact raised even more questions. And somewhere nearby, someone who knew the whole truth about the Volkov family was hiding. And that person clearly had no intention of keeping quiet forever. The Secret of the Abandoned Barn. Two Haasbachs. It took the whole day to search the Volkovs' house. Each room told its own story. In Masha's bedroom, dolls stood neatly lined up on a shelf, but one was missing. Her favorite doll with golden hair, which the girl carried everywhere. Where was it now? In Artem's room, the radio was dismantled. The boy had been repairing something on the last day of his life. Unfinished work that was never meant to be completed. Solovyova methodically photographed every detail. Modern technology made it possible to find clues that were unavailable to investigators 25 years ago. Under a microscope, every speck of dust could be the key to solving the mystery. But she was most interested in the freshest fingerprints on the door handles and furniture. This person knew the house, she stated, studying the unknown intruder's movements. He wasn't searching at random. He purposefully checked certain places, the wardrobe in the bedroom, the desk drawer, the mezzanine in the hallway. She looked up. He was looking for documents or valuables. Morozov frowned. When could this have happened? Judging by the layer of dust on the fingerprints, no more than 5 years ago, maybe even earlier. The forensic expert paused. But there's something else strange. The bedside table in the parents' bedroom has been moved. There are scratches on the floor underneath it. Someone was looking for a hiding place. What could have been hidden in the Volkov family home? And why did someone return here years after their disappearance? Each new clue only complicated the picture. Morozov felt that they were on the right track, but even more shocking discoveries awaited them. By evening, the investigation team had moved to the farm. Ivan Stepanov met them at the gate, nervous and constantly looking around. He had aged noticeably over the past day. The weight of the discovery was weighing heavily on him. "I haven't been able to sleep since yesterday," he admitted to Krotov. "I keep thinking, what if there's something else there? In other sheds, in the basement of the farm?" Morozov was intrigued. "The basement? We didn't check it in 1996. It was flooded back then. Every spring the water rose. About 10 years ago I pumped it out and wanted to use it as a storage room." Ivan led them to the main farm building. "Maybe we should take a look." The basement turned out to be a spacious room with brick walls. Solovyova turned on a powerful flashlight and examined the floor. In the far corner, the concrete screed looked newer than the rest of the surface. It was as if someone had poured new concrete over the floor to hide something underneath. "We need to dig here," she said confidently. But Morozov shook his head. "First, let's use the ground-penetrating radar. If there really is something there, we need to do everything by the book." He looked at Ivan seriously. "Are you sure you don't know who could have poured the floor here?" "No idea. When I started working here, the basement was already like this." He even paused. "Although, the old-timers said that after the farm closed, some guy in a truck would sometimes come here, supposedly to take something away. Who was this mysterious man with the truck? And what could he have been taking away from the abandoned farm?" Morozov wrote down all the details in his notebook. Tomorrow he would call in specialists with ground-penetrating radar. His intuition told him that the answers to all his questions lay beneath the concrete floor. That night, Morozov couldn't sleep in his hotel room in the regional center. He went over the facts, trying to piece them together. A family disappeared on New Year's Eve, 1995. Their valuables were found in a hiding place on a farm. Someone searches their house years later. Someone pours concrete into the basement of the farm. All these events are connected. But how? At 3 in the morning, he was awakened by the ringing of the phone. The duty officer at the district police station reported in an agitated voice. "Alexander Viktorovich, there's been an arson attack. The Volkov's house is on fire." Morozov jumped out of bed. Coincidence? Or does someone want to destroy the evidence? "Did you call the fire department?" "Yes, but it's too late. The house is almost completely burned down. The locals say the fire was very intense, as if someone had poured something on it." "I'm on my way." Morozov quickly got dressed and called Krotov. "Sergei, arson. Someone doesn't want us digging around there." By dawn, only a charred skeleton remained of the Volkov's house. Firefighters were extinguishing the last pockets of fire. The expert immediately determined that it was arson, and professional arson at that. An accelerant had been used, and the fire had started at several points simultaneously. "It's a good thing we photographed everything yesterday," Solovyova said grimly. "Now these pictures are all we have." But Morozov was thinking about something else. Who knew about their investigation? The information about the find in the barn was not secret, but the circle of those in the know was limited. That meant the arsonist was someone local, someone who was afraid the truth would come out. "We need to question all the villagers immediately," he told Krotov. "Someone saw the arsonist in such a small village. There are no secrets." The questioning of the residents began in the morning. The elderly were eager to talk about the Volkov family. Everyone remembered and respected them. Mikhail helped his fellow villagers repair their equipment, and Elena was a beloved teacher of the local children. Their disappearance shook the entire village. "They were good people," sighed Baba Klava, the oldest resident of the village. "Mikhail had golden hands. He could fix anything. And Lenochka loved our children like her own." "Who could have hurt them?" Krotov asked cautiously. The old woman thought for a moment. They didn't seem to have any enemies. Except maybe... I remember a man coming to visit them in the fall of that year. He was driving an old, dirty car. Mikhail didn't seem very happy to see him. Morozov pricked up his ears. "Do you remember what he looked like?" He was tall and thin. He had an angry face. His hands were dirty. He looked like a mechanic or something. She paused. "And then, after New Year's, I saw him again. He was driving around the village, looking for something." Who was this mysterious mechanic? And what was he doing in the village after the family disappeared? Morozov felt they were on the right track. They just needed to find this man, and everything would become clear. But Baba Klava wasn't finished yet. And there's something else strange. After the family disappeared, this man came to the farm. At night, I heard his truck. It has a distinctive engine. It crackles. She looked at the investigators fearfully. "And he came again recently. I saw his headlights the night before last. I thought about telling you, but I was afraid." So the arsonist was here the day before yesterday, the day they found the cash. He was watching their movements and decided to destroy the evidence. But who is this man, and where is he now? Morozov realized they didn't have much time. The criminal knows he's being hunted and could go into hiding or destroy the remaining evidence. "We need to check all the auto repair shops in the area," he told Krotov. "We're looking for a mechanic with a truck and dirty hands. And call a team with a ground-penetrating radar device immediately. We're going to tear up the floor in the basement." By lunchtime, the specialists had arrived at the farm. The ground-penetrating radar showed anomalies under the concrete screed. Something was definitely buried there. But opening the floor was a complicated procedure that required permits and protocols. "It will take a day," said the team leader. "We have to be careful not to damage any possible evidence." But Morozov was in a hurry. Every hour of delay gave the criminal a chance to escape. And then something happened that changed the course of the investigation. An old truck with a rattling engine pulled up to the farm gate. Behind the wheel sat a man in his 60s, thin, with dirty hands and an angry face. He looked exactly like Baba Klava had described. He didn't notice the investigation team and headed straight for the farm basement. He was carrying a shovel. "It's him," whispered Krotov, "the arsonist." Morozov signaled to his colleagues. They had to catch him red-handed. What was he going to do in the basement? Dig up evidence? Or, on the contrary, bury something new? In any case, this man knew the truth about the Volkov family. And now that truth would be revealed. The stranger went down into the basement and turned on a flashlight. He examined the concrete floor and hit it with a shovel. The sound was hollow. There was nothing under the concrete. The man began to chip away at the floor, unaware that he was being watched. "Let's get him," Morozov commanded. The arrest went without resistance. The man didn't even try to run away. He probably understood that the game was over. When asked for his documents, he silently handed over his passport. Nikolai Kuznetsov, born in 1960, registered in a neighboring district. "Why did you come here?" Morozov asked. Kuznetsov was silent for a long time, then sighed heavily. "To take what's left. I thought no one would find it." "What exactly?" "What I didn't have time to take back then, in '95. He looked at the investigator with tired eyes. "You already know. Why are you asking?" Morozov felt his heart beating faster. Here was the man who knew the whole truth about New Year's Eve, 1995. The man who could tell them what had happened to the Volkov family. But was he ready to talk? And what exactly would they find under the concrete floor of the basement? "Tell me everything from the beginning," said Morozov, turning on the tape recorder. "From the very beginning." Kuznetsov closed his eyes and began to speak. What they heard over the next half hour turned their entire understanding of the case upside down. The story the mechanic told was worse than their darkest imaginings. And now they had to find the final evidence of this tragedy. Under the concrete floor of the basement, the answers to all their questions awaited them. But some truths are better left unknown. Some secrets must remain buried forever. However, justice demanded that the truth prevail, no matter how terrible it was. When the experts began to cut open the floor, everyone present understood that they were on the verge of a discovery that would shock not only them, but everyone who learned this story, New Year's Eve 1995, would finally reveal its secrets. And those secrets would turn out to be more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. The Secret of the Abandoned Barn, Part 3, Final. Nikolai Kuznetsov began to speak in a quiet, monotonous voice. Each word fell into the silence of the basement, like a sentence pronounced on himself. What he said made the investigators shudder. New Year's Eve 1995 was taking on a terrifying shape. "I was working as a mechanic in a neighboring village at the time," Kuznetsov began. "I didn't have enough money. My wife had left me, and my children weren't talking to me. Then Mikhail Volkov brought his car in for repairs." He paused, as if gathering his strength. "When he paid me, I saw a wad of large bills in his wallet. More than I earned in a year." Morozov did not interrupt, letting the criminal speak. Every detail was important for reconstructing the full picture of the crime. 25 years of waiting were finally coming to an end. "I started asking my acquaintances about the Volkovs," It turned out that Mikhail had a side job helping someone from the city find old burial sites. Military graves? There was gold and jewelry from the dead. It was good business in those days. Kuznetsov smiled bitterly. He was saving up for a new car. He kept it at home in cash. He didn't trust banks. So the motive was trivial, robbery. But what turned the theft into the murder of 4 people? Morozov waited for the story to continue, feeling the tension grow with every word. On December 31st, I went to their house. It was late, around midnight. I thought everyone was asleep, so I'd quickly grab the money and leave. Kuznetsov's voice trembled, but they were celebrating New Year's Eve. Mikhail opened the door, thinking I had come to wish him a happy new year. It was terrifying to imagine the scene. The family was sitting at the holiday table. The children were enjoying the holiday, and death entered the door with dirty hands and greedy eyes. How quickly did family happiness turn into a nightmare? I said that my car had broken down and asked if I could stay the night. Mikhail agreed. He was a kind man. Kuznetsov closed his eyes, and I waited for everyone to fall asleep. But Elena suspected something. She whispered to her husband that I couldn't be trusted. The teacher's maternal instinct did not fail her. She sensed danger, but it was too late. The wolf had already entered the house, and there was no way out. What happened next? Around 2 in the morning, I went to look for the money. I thought everyone was asleep. But Mikhail woke up and caught me in the bedroom. Kuznetsov was breathing heavily. We fought. He was stronger, but I took a knife from the kitchen. I didn't want to kill him. I was just defending myself. Lise Morozov had seen enough crimes to recognize attempts at self-justification. Kuznetsov had gone there to kill from the very beginning. He didn't need any living witnesses to the robbery. And then the others woke up. Elena was screaming. The children were crying. The criminal's voice became barely audible. I knew that if I left anyone alive, they would find me. I already had a criminal record, so suspicion would immediately fall on me. There it was, the criminal's terrible logic. Kill one, kill them all. The Volkov family fell victim not only to greed, but also to cowardice. Kuznetsov couldn't stop after the first murder. I found the money. It was in a closet in an old box, almost 200,000 rubles. That was a huge amount of money back then. He raised his head and looked at the investigators. And then I realized I had to get rid of the bodies. If they were found, it would lead back to me. Morozov felt his heart sink. Now Kuznetsov was going to tell them what they would find under the concrete floor of the basement. And that would be the most terrifying part of the story. I had a truck. I loaded them up and took them to the farm. It was already abandoned. I dug a hole in the basement and buried them there. Kuznetsov swallowed. Then I poured concrete over them. I thought no one would ever find them. What about their belongings? Documents, jewelry? Morozov asked. At first I wanted to burn them, but I changed my mind. They might come in handy. I hid them in the shed, in a secret compartment under the floor, and I wrote a note to make it look like they had left voluntarily. Kuznetsov shook his head. It was stupid, but I was panicking at the time. For 25 years, the Volkov family lay in an unmarked grave under the floor of an abandoned basement. Their relatives didn't know where to look for their remains. They couldn't say goodbye, put up a monument, or bring flowers. That was the cruelest part of Kuznetsov's crime. He deprived their loved ones of even the right to mourn. Why did you come back? Krotov asked. 25 years have passed. And you found the hiding place in the shed. You realized that now you could get to the basement. Kuznetsov shrugged. I wanted to take what was left there. A gold chain, rings. I have debts. I need money. Until the very last moment, he thought only of profit. Even now, when the truth had been revealed, he was more concerned about money than the fate of the people who had died. Morozov had seen many criminals, but he had rarely encountered such cynicism. When experts broke open the concrete floor of the basement, they indeed found the remains of 4 people. The examination confirmed that it was the Volkov family. Mikhail, Elena, 14-year-old Artem, and 9-year-old Masha lay in a cramped grave, embracing each other even in death. The discovery shocked everyone involved in the excavation. Even seasoned criminologists could not hold back their tears. The family had waited a quarter of a century for justice. And finally, that day had come. Sergei Volkov, brother of the deceased Mikhail, arrived at the excavation site. He had spent 25 years searching for his relatives, spending all his savings and knocking on every door. When he was told about the discovery, he couldn't believe it. He had lived on hope for too long. I knew they were dead, he said quietly, watching the experts carefully remove the remains. But I still hoped. Maybe they were alive somewhere. Maybe they had new names, new lives. He wiped away his tears. Now at least I know where to look for them. The funeral took place a week later. Half the village came to see the family off on their final journey. Many remembered the Volkovs, loved them, and mourned their tragic fate. A memorial was erected on the grave with 4 names on black granite. The Volkov family, Mikhail, Elena, Artem, Maria, killed on New Year's Eve, 1995. Their memory will live forever. The investigation into Kuznetsov's case continued for several months. Modern forensic methods made it possible to reconstruct the full picture of the crime. The perpetrator's DNA was found on all the physical evidence. His fingerprints were everywhere in the Volkov's house. The defense attorney tried to get a lighter sentence, citing the defendant's advanced age and the length of time since the crime. But the evidence was ironclad. 4 lives cut short by the greed and cruelty of one man. The trial attracted attention throughout the region. Journalists wrote about the crime of the century, and television stations filmed documentaries. The story of the Volkov family became a symbol of the importance of never giving up the search for justice. Prosecutor Dmitry Belov said in his speech, "For a quarter of a century, the criminal lived a quiet life, enjoyed the stolen money, and thought he had escaped justice. But justice has no statute of limitations. The memory of the victims demands punishment." Judge Marina Petrova listened to all the testimony, examined the evidence, and handed down the verdict. Nikolai Kuznetsov is found guilty of the murder of 4 people under aggravating circumstances. He is sentenced to 25 years in a maximum security prison. This was the maximum sentence allowed by law. In the courtroom, Sergei Volkov wept, not with joy, but with relief. Justice had finally prevailed. His brother, sister-in-law, nephew, and niece could rest in peace. Kuznetsov listened to the verdict without emotion. At 64, he understood that he would not leave the colony alive. 25 years of freedom for 4 murders. That was the price of his crime. After the trial, Morozov met with journalists. They asked him how he felt after uncovering a quarter-century-old case. "Relief," he replied honestly. "This case has haunted me throughout my career. I thought about the Volkov family every day. Now they have found peace, and the criminal has got what he deserved." Ivan Stepanov continued to work as a security guard on the farm. But now he was not just a guard of an abandoned place, but a keeper of the memory of the tragedy. Tourists came to see the barn where the hiding place had been found, and the basement that had become the grave of an innocent family. "It's a terrible place," he told visitors. "But we mustn't forget. People need to know that evil does not go unpunished." A year after the trial, a memorial was erected in the village of Vit, not only to the Volkov family, but to all victims of unsolved crimes. The inscription read, "Justice may be delayed, but it will not be denied." The Volkov family case became a textbook example of the importance of modern technology in criminal investigation. What was impossible in 1996 became a reality in 2020. DNA analysis, digital processing of evidence, and computer databases all helped find the killer. Morozov often spoke to young investigators, telling them the story of the Volkov family. His main lesson was simple: never give up. Time works for justice. Sooner or later, the truth will come out. Kuznetsov died in prison 3 years after his sentence. Prison doctors said his heart gave out, but many believed it was not illness, but his conscience. He had lived with the secret of 4 murders for 28 years. In the end, that secret killed him. Sergei Volkov regularly visited his brother's grave and that of his family. He brought flowers, told them the news, and shared his memories. Now he knew where to find peace for his heart. "Misha, I didn't give up," he whispered, standing at the monument. "I found the man who killed you. Justice has prevailed." The story of the Volkov family reminds us that evil can hide for a long time, but it cannot win in the end. The love of loved ones, the persistence of investigators, and the development of technology all work against crime. On New Year's Eve, the residents of the village of Vit light candles at the monument to the Volkov family. It has become a tradition to remember those who did not live to see the dawn of the new year. Their story ended in tragedy, but their memory will live on forever. The mystery of the abandoned barn has been solved. Justice has prevailed. And somewhere in the frosty sky above the village of Vit, 4 souls have finally found peace, knowing that their killer got what he deserved. But the main question remains: could this tragedy have been prevented? If Mikhail Volkov hadn't kept a large sum of money at home, if he hadn't trusted a stranger on New Year's Eve, if Elena had insisted on her suspicions. So many ifs that won't change anything now.